All right, let's talk about the former ADOR employee who said she has suffered from workplace bullying by Min Hee-jin and sexual harassment by a former vice president, former VP of ADOR, because she came up with this statement yesterday and has provided an update on her case against Min Hee-jin and the former VP. And she kindly provided English translation and even Japanese translation because she knew that there are people, foreign audience, who are interested in this case. So here we go. And I'm going to go through some, quite a lot of materials in this video. So get ready for it. Labor Office decision update. Today, March 24th, which was yesterday, I received the Labor Office's decision notice via registered mail. Thank you sincerely for your support. Many have expressed curiosity about the results, so I'm sharing the key points below. Petition 1. Ms. Min Hee-jin's failure to conduct an impartial investigation was recognized, resulting in a fine. Number 2. Petition 2. Workplace harassment, verbal abuse, etc. by Ms. Min Hee-jin was acknowledged and she was fined. While the degree of recognition was only 12%, the fine reflects a significant level of accountability. 3. I gave Ms. Min multiple chances, 4 chances, to resolve this through an apology, but she refused and instead filed a lawsuit against me. I no longer expect an apology. Boom. 4. I will continue to respond earnestly to the remaining legal cases, including the lawsuit she filed against me. 5. External investigations confirmed workplace harassment by the vice president, but couldn't determine sexual harassment. The Labor Office agreed and no fine was imposed. 6. To all workers, the vulnerable and victims, stay strong. To me, especially the bullet point 5 and 6 are interesting. So we will dig deeper into this, but this former ADOR employee known as Person B has been, quite direct and to the point whenever she posts things, right? And the reason why she expresses gratitude in the beginning for the audience is because people have shown support for her. There were some people who have shown support for her last year when she was getting witch hunted by the supporters of Min Hee-jin for whatever reasons they believed in. Now, she also shared some extra materials through her Instagram story, which is already lost. So here's a video that I just uploaded in the Korean version by the time I had it. So she also shared this screen. Says, oh, I overlooked something important. Workplace harassment is acknowledged in 12% of all reported cases, but only 1.3% result in a fine. So here's an article that she quoted. Reporting workplace harassment to the Labor Office, only 1.3% result in fines. 1.8% refer to prosecutors. Reports of workplace harassment to the Labor Office have steadily increased, but only 1.3% of cases result in fines and just 1.8% are forwarded to the prosecution, despite nearly 1/3 of cases being withdrawn after filing. According to data from the Ministry of Employment and Labor obtained by Workplace Kpop 119 through an independent lawmaker, the number of workplace harassment reports filed with the Labor Office more than doubled from 7,398 cases in 2020, the year after the anti-harassment law took effect, to 15,801 cases in 2023. However, concerns remain about the effectiveness of how these cases are handled. Of the 39,316 cases reported since 2019, only 10.3% resulted in corrective guidance, 1.3% in fines, and 1.8% were referred to the prosecution, according to the ministry's own statistics on workplace harassment outcomes. Meanwhile, 31% of cases were withdrawn by the complainants, 29.2% were closed on the grounds that there was no legal violation, and 55.6% were categorized as other, making up over half of all outcomes. So This statistics highlights how rare it is for reported workplace harassment cases to result in actual penalties. Right? Despite many people filing complaints, only a small fraction are officially recognized, and even fewer lead to fines. So for the person B, victim B, who not only had her case acknowledged, but also triggered a preliminary fine against Min Hee-jin, this outcome is statistically rare and unusually serious. So in other words, this person B is pointing out that her case wasn't just taken seriously. It passed through a system where most complaints don't go anywhere. That reinforces her position that what she experienced wasn't minor or easily dismissed, and that the authorities recognize it as severe enough to act on despite how rarely that happens. Now here's another screenshot that she shared. Here we go. So another article that says, Labor Office, Min Hee-jin improperly interfered in ex-ADOR employee B's sexual harassment case. Min Hee-jin fined for violating her duty to conduct an objective investigation under the Labor Standards Act. And here's some bullet points. Min Hee-jin's remarks were deemed workplace harassment. A fine was issued and the case was closed administratively, advising person B to raise the issue with, I will skip that part. But here's something interesting. This screenshot, according to this screenshot, the title was, like I said, Labor Office, Min Hee-jin improperly interfered in ex-ADOR employees B's sexual harassment case. But if you actually look at the article that she quoted, the title has changed. It says, Labor Office, Min Hee-jin and ADOR receive preliminary fine notice. Sexual harassment allegation against former deputy CEO found groundless. Min Hee-jin's legal team has stated they are preparing to file an official objection regarding the case involving former ADOR employee B. So something happened between the point that this person B shared this screenshot, quoting this article, and this article became revised. So we'll find out what has happened by reading this article, okay? Min Hee-jin, the former CEO of HYBE's sublabel ADOR, has received a preliminary notice of a fine from the Labor Office following a complaint filed by former employee B. Last August, Person B publicly stated through Monthly Chosun that, so this article is written by Monthly Chosun, that she intended to file both civil and criminal charges against Min Hee-jin. On March 24th, the Seoul Regional Employment and Labor Office announced that their investigation into Person B's complaint had confirmed some violations of the law on Min Hee-jin's part. As a result, they issued a preliminary administrative fine notice. In the original complaint, Person B accused Min Hee-jin of workplace harassment, including verbal abuse, and of improperly interfering in a sexual harassment case involving the former deputy CEO, referred to as Person A. Person B also accused Deputy CEO A, who has since left the company, of workplace harassment, including sexual misconduct. The Labor Office concluded that some of Min Hee-jin's actions qualified as workplace harassment. They explained that her repeated comments toward Person B went beyond what is considered appropriate in the workplace and caused physical and psychological distress, potentially worsening Person B's working environment. Based on this, the office decided that her actions fell under the definition of workplace harassment and issued a preliminary fine before closing the case administratively. One of the key issues in the investigation was the allegation that Min Hee-jin had interfered in the handling of the sexual harassment case involving Deputy CEO A. The Labor Office determined that this interference constituted a violation of Article 76-3, Clause 2 of the Labor Standards Act. Specifically, Min Hee-jin was found to have shared the internal investigation results with Deputy CEO via company email after receiving them from upper management. Furthermore, she advised the deputy CEO on how to respond to the allegations, which was deemed a violation of her legal obligation to ensure an objective investigation. This served as grounds for the preliminary fine. But not all of person B's claims were acknowledged. Regarding the sexual harassment accusation, the Labor Office stated that an investigation had been launched immediately on the day the complaint was filed. They also noted that none of person B's claims or evidence were dismissed without valid reason, and there was no confirmation that person B experienced sexual humiliation during the process. Taking these points into consideration, the office concluded that no legal violation had occurred in relation to the sexual harassment claims. Speaking with Monthly Chosun, person B expressed that this was the first result among several civil and criminal cases filed against Min Hee-jin. She stated that she had received the registered mail notice that very day and considered the Labor Office's decision to be deeply meaningful. She also said that she believed the outcome would impact the other related legal proceedings. She added that she was relieved by the result and would continue to respond diligently to future developments. Good. In response to ongoing speculation about a possible connection between person B and HYBE, she clarified that the timing of the notice was purely coincidental as it was simply received via registered mail that day. She also emphasized that the case was entirely unrelated to NewJeans or HYBE and should be viewed as a separate issue. Why is she saying that? Because last year, Min Hee-jin supporters witch hunted her by writing comments such as, "Are you part of HYBE?" or "Are you getting hired by HYBE?" or "Are you related to HYBE?" or if they basically assumed that. And how did it all started? Because Min Hee-jin herself directly asked her, literally saying, "너 하이브니? Are you HYBE?" Right? So she's making clarifications yet again. Meanwhile, regarding the allegations of sexual harassment and workplace harassment involving former Deputy CEO A, the Labor Office found no legal violations, but they instructed the company to implement preventive and corrective measures to address and prevent similar issues in the future. Commenting on the case, labor attorney An explained that under the Labor Standards Act, when workplace harassment occurs between employees, the company is generally expected to conduct its own investigation. Unless the investigation is found to be clearly biased or insufficient, the results are usually respected. In this case, the Labor Office appears to have accepted the findings of the external law firm hired to conduct the investigation and deemed those findings valid. After this article was published, Min Hee-jin's legal team responded to Monthly Chosun, clarifying that the case was still in the preliminary stages. They emphasized that no fine had been officially imposed yet, and that what was issued was a preliminary notice. They added that they were currently reviewing the matter and would submit an objection. A fine would only be imposed if no valid objection is filed. So here, we have discovered why the article title has changed, because I'm pretty sure Min Hee-jin and her lawyers have contacted Monthly Chosun to change the title and revise the content. Why? Because they're about to file an objection. So, yet again, they're doing the media play, and the Korean media reported on the fact, so there are lots of headlines written about it, like this. And why is she doing that? Probably because this result, the decision made by the Labor Office, would affect the later legal cases awaiting Min Hee-jin and person B, right, as person B has stated. And it could even potentially affect the legal cases conflict between Min Hee-jin and HYBE over whether the decision to fire her as ADOR CEO was valid or not. So that's my perspective. Now, you might ask, what exactly did Min Hee-jin say or do to person B that had led the situation to here? I could explain the whole context from the beginning, but I have found out that I have explained quite clearly in this video. Not this video, sorry. Where is it? Right here. Back on October 1st, 2024, dear politician who summoned Nugent's honey to National Assembly audit. So we all remember this, right? Korean politicians summoned or asked Nugent's honey to come over to National Assembly audit to speak her thoughts as like a almost representative of worker working in the K-pop industry. And I wrote this in a format of letter to the chairman, An Ho-young. It goes something like this. Dear Mr. An Ho-young, I heard that during the 2024 National Assembly audit, you plan to examine this issue of the dark shadows of K-pop, workplace bullying, and the reality of workers outside of labor laws. So his name is An Ho-young, the chairman of the National Assembly's Environment and Labor Committee, and he has set the theme of the National Assembly for his committee as the dark shadows of K-pop, workplace bullying, and the reality of workers outside of labor laws. And he was the one who took the initiative in inviting Nugent's honey to come over to National Assembly to speak, which is quite a serious matter. Now, let's move over to this timestamp mark. Where I talk about the former ex-ADOR employee case. The theme of this year's Environment and Labor Committee audit is workplace bullying. I wanted to point out this ignore her remark in case it becomes your focal point. If you frame this as workplace bullying just because a manager who earns less than half of your monthly salary told the members to ignore honey who makes far more money than you, that would be quite surprising. Now, I'm not saying that people who make a lot of money can't be victims of bullying. Of course not. The victim of the case I'm sure you'll be addressing in the audit, since the topic is specifically about workplace bullying, also earned a considerable amount. Although her earnings were lower than Honey's 5.2 billion Korean won or your annual salary of 157 million Korean won, the former ADOR employee who was a victim of workplace harassment and sexual harassment had an annual salary of 130 million Korean won. You might ask how I know this so well. It's because Min Hee-jin publicly discloses at the time without the employee's consent. Without her consent. And that statement that you're seeing made by Min Hee-jin or her lawyers was extremely long, as always. So, indeed, you're right. Making a lot of money doesn't mean one can't be harassed. Of course, this amount is nothing compared to Min Hee-jin's salary. Enough about money. Mr. An, if you properly address the issue of workplace bullying in the upcoming audit, I believe the victim might find some comfort. Even Billboard has covered this case, but Korean media has largely ignored it. Instead of receiving an apology from the perpetrator, the victim is experiencing further harm. Isn't it workplace bullying when a company CEO intervenes to shield the perpetrator of sexual harassment and bullying, defends him, coaches him, and claims the victim's report is irresponsible and fabrication and retaliatory? Real life is a bitch. Bitches who do crappy work and file complaints like this. You bitch, go die. Psychopath, mental case. Isn't this verbal abuse and slander more of a workplace bullying issue than just saying, ignore her? Wouldn't it be workplace bullying when a boss makes life miserable for an employee with verbal abuse and insults, publicly exposes the KakaoTalk messages of a former employee without consent, spreads numerous lies, and frames the victim as an incompetent worker who filed a retaliatory false report, far more than a manager saying ignore her to the members? Honey might have misheard, and we can never confirm the exact context of the remark, but even if the remark was actually made, I just hope the hurt she experienced from hearing ignore her pales in comparison to the hellish torments endured by this former ADOR employee who is still suffering today. The most important thing is the victim's voice, so I'd like to read the recent post made from the victim. And before we do that, yes, everything that Min Hee-jin has said in her conversation with the former vice president or vice CEO was revealed by Dispatch, right? All the remarks that I cannot even dare to say. In fact, I don't wanna repeat these remarks again. But anyways, but now here's an interesting thing. Remember how in the video or in the Kpop messages she attacked the feminist and the former ADOR employee while attacking feminists, right? But very ironically, at the time when Korea, half of Korea fell in love with her press conference, there were some people, some journalists, and I think in fact this was a foreign journalist who said Min Hee-jin is a young woman fighting against patriarchy of Korea in Korea. So framing her as this the queen of feminists, fighting against the tradition, when in fact she herself has clearly stated that she hates feminists. And then in fact she was the one who made remarks of how she's willing to the so-called conduct a bodily lobbying to get what she wants from men. Enough said, let's go back to the video. There still hasn't been a single word of apology. So this is one of the statements made by the victim B, person B, right? Min Hee-jin intervened in the investigation to cover up workplace sexual harassment and bullying claims, exposed my KakaoTalk messages without my consent, spread false information, and stirred up conflict behind the scenes. When I demanded a public apology, the response I received included exposing my salary, accusations like, "You didn't do your job well. You're with HYBE, aren't you? You enjoy drinking with them too," along with an 18-page smear campaign. And just last week, the vice president, the perpetrator, filed a defamation lawsuit against me. It's shocking that so many people believe and support the story of someone who's stuck to their lies, claiming neutrality and blaming my firing on my incompetence, even after their falsehoods were exposed. I expected at least some reflection, but instead, they're burying everything as if it never happened. Min Hee-jin cries out her innocence while her close associate files criminal charges against me. Seeing no sign of remorse from them is truly regrettable. Many politicians use the National Assembly audit as a performance or marketing tool, but Mr. An, I believe you will thoroughly investigate this matter and handle it properly. You must have done so already, given the grand title, The Dark Shadows of Kpop, Workplace Bullying and the Reality of Workers Outside of Labor Laws, and your remark that the problem is serious. I sincerely hope that this time, the voice of the former ADOR employee will not be ignored. Now, what actually happened? Did they listen to her voice, or did they entirely ignore her? Well, we all know what had already happened, right? During the National Assembly. All those sweet politicians of Korea have only lent their ears to Honey alone. And in fact, all parties were united in such effort. An Ho-young from Democratic Party, Kim Hyung-dong from PPP, Park Hong-bae from DP with bunny stickers attached to his laptop, legendary. Park Jung from DP, Woo Jae-jun from PPP, and Chung Hae-kyung from Progressive Party. And in fact, at the time, lots of media, including SBS News, who portrayed Honey as someone like Lee Sun-shin, Admiral Lee Sun-shin, one of the legendary admirals in Korean history. the leader, the greatest leader, as someone who is fighting for her freedom and her teammates on behalf of her team, and almost like a representative of K-pop workers and employees. So that's what happened. But what was the aftermath? As you know, Honey made a statement during the audit, something like, "We are all humans." Another legendary quote. But what happened? Labor Office closed the case saying that Honey is not a worker or a laborer. And it has turned out during the court hearing for the legal case between ADOR and New Jeans, Honey has never even heard the phrase, "ignore her." In fact, the phrase was created by Min Hee-jin. And, she instilled that phrase into Honey's brain. And then the court recently decided that the whole ignore her incident is, basically BS or insufficient. It doesn't make sense that New Jeans cannot leave ADOR, right? With the injunction case. But New Jeans and Honey weren't satisfied with the results and did an interview with Time magazine and said that this is the reality of Korea and they're turning us into revolutionaries. Now, like I told you in my previous video, the domestic GP's stance against New Jeans got so bad that on YouTube right now, if you type New Jeans Korea, what automatically shows up is New Jeans belittling Korea or New Jeans Korea bashing and New Jeans and the reality of Korea. So it just shows how the GP has turned against them. Then here's an interesting question that I would like to pose for the Korean politicians who cares so much about the general public's opinions, right? Like if they have a chance to invite Honey or New Jeans member to National Assembly today, would they do it? Or would they decide to listen to the actual workers and vulnerable and victims? And interesting, I just noticed that in a Korean statement, the person B has said 진짜 노동자들, the real workers and the weak and the vulnerable and the victims. So there you go. Who are the real workers and who are the vulnerable and who are the victims? That's the question. Is it this victim or person B, or is it Honey? And in fact, who's the perpetrator? Who's a real perpetrator? I think the answer lies in KakaoTalk messages, but we still have to wait for legal cases to be closed, right? Wait for the court to make judgments. And also, now that we know that Min Hee-jin has filed, or about to, I'm not sure if she actually did, file an objection for Labor Office, we'll have to see what kinds of decision Labor Office will make. Will they stick with the decision or will they overturn it? What do you guys think? Thankfully, so my hope is that even though there are a lot of people nowadays who have forgotten about the whole New Jeans stuff since their press conference, they're starting to create all kinds of contests, including YouTubers and bloggers. But my concern is that we're forgetting about the person who was behind everything, right? While forgetting about the former employee B. But thankfully, it seems like people who have watched my videos, especially the video that I uploaded back in January 8th, revisiting the story of former ADOR employee, people are expressing their support for the former employee, right? Saying, I feel so much for the victim. They are courageous for standing up against someone as scary and powerful as Min Hee-jin. I hope she will find peace, knowing she likely prevented this from happening to many others. I have no doubt that she's not the first. So, we'll see. And feel free to discuss. As a HYBE shareholder, I mean, it's an understatement to say that I really regret all these statements that Min Hee-jin have made, even though she did it privately, because, she was supposed to be a leader responsible for creating a good work environment, atmosphere. But, she said all these stuff behind their backs, attacking the former employee, and trying to cover up the whole case while calling her names. That is just unbelievable. So we'll stay top of this case. I'll keep you updated if there are more things to cover. All right, feel free to comment while staying positive, respectful, and classy. Thank you guys. Peace and love. Bye-bye.